All right, friends, I'm super excited for who you're going to get to meet today. I'm sitting here with my new friend, Greer Jones. Greer, welcome to Girls Night.
Thank you for having me.
For women who haven't gotten to meet you yet, can you tell us who you are, what you do? And I'd love to hear a fun fact about you.
Yeah, so my name is Greer, and like Stephanie said, I live in the UK, although I was born and raised in the US. So I always say I have two places I call home. And I am an advocate for those who are neurodiverse. So neurodiverse includes people who are autistic, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's, bipolar. There's a big long list. But just giving a voice to people who have their brains are wired slightly differently, and making sure that they are getting the support they need, as well as just trying to share more about the everyday and what that really looks like. So that's what I do. And a fun fact about me is that I do not wear matching socks. I just don't think I don't have time to match my socks. And I have very colorful socks. So I just throw them into my drawer and in the morning pick out two. And if they match, great. If not, then that's totally okay.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I feel like that's like a little bit of a life philosophy. Like I am going to major in the majors and just forget everything else and just going to have colorful socks.
Yep.
Let the
Yeah.
chips fall where they may.
Yeah. And my boys, I have two boys and and my husband, and they all have black socks. So it's totally okay if I don't have to match those either because they're all black.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so Greer, I want to hear. I'm really, really happy to be talking about this. This conversation is really at the forefront of a lot of my girls' nights in person, with a lot of my girlfriends, a lot of their partners, a lot of their kids. In my family, like I feel like so many people are talking about neurodiversity in a new way. And so I'm so glad that you are using your voice to be an advocate and like sharing your story because I think and anything is harder if we don't know anyone who's gone through it first. And if we haven't even heard anyone, like I don't even know anyone who has walked this path, it's really hard to know how to walk it and that there's even a path there's even a path that
Mm.
could welcome you into it or a community that can welcome you into it. So I have just a whole bunch of questions. I don't want to waste any time. So here is my first one. Um, you have been walking your own path of discovering that you are neurodiverse. What are some of the first signs that made you wonder, like, is this something that's true about me? And like, just tell me the beginning of your personal story.
Yeah. So it actually happened because I was listening to a book called This All Makes Sense Now, by Meredith Cartier. Highly recommend that book for anyone. And she's just sharing her journey to becoming diagnosed with ADHD. And I was literally doing my dishes, and she tells a story of how she started a company one night, basically, because she wanted to. And as she said the story, I was like, you have literally just described my life. And every not major decision, but just kind of some key decisions and how they seem like they were made on a whim, but they weren't, but they were all at the same time. And so that was the first time I was like, okay, hold on a second. And we'd gone through the process with my son. So my son is autistic and ADHD. And there were things in that process I was like, oh, I kind of do that, but I don't really. And, just different things like that. So I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. But this book really just was the biggest aha moment, really, because she just basically was saying everything about my life. And I was like, how do you know this? She lives a whole other country from me. So that was kind of the big thing. And then as I looked into what ADHD for women are, or like kind of characteristics, I was like, okay, yeah, this explains my life. So characteristics in women who, not just for ADHD, but for neurodivergence, is a lot more internally. So for example, I have ADHD. I am not bouncing off the walls externally. I'm not always on the move, which is what you would kind of typically think of someone with ADHD is like, or maybe bouncing their leg, fidgeting. A lot of women don't do that, but internally, my brain is always racing. I always say my eyes are open and my brain is instantly turned on, and it goes from 0 to 100 in 1 second flat. And so a lot of things are more internally than externally when it's kind of things. So that would be one thing I would just kind of say, even as people might be thinking about this, is, am I internally always having thoughts or feeling certain things? Do I always, another thing that was a big kind of aha moment was I, so there's something called rejection sensitivity or dysphoria. And it's basically you're projecting rejection because our brains have heard so much rejection over time that we project onto, this person no longer likes me because they spoke harshly to me, when in reality they didn't speak harshly. It's just our brains heard it that way. And something that I realized that I did a lot was in emails, particularly emails, because you read your own voice into it. I would, just realize that people weren't mad at me all the time. That's how I always felt, was people were mad at me all the time. And how in reality, the emails were just them stating facts, them just, saying what they needed to say and move on, kind of thing. And that's something else that once I kind of realized that that was happening, was another big aha moment of like, okay, no, the world doesn't hate me. It's just my brain is sensitive to rejection. And so how can I put things in place to help that?
Did you have any I know that everyone's brain is different, and even the same diagnosis can show up in two people differently. But can you give us like a couple more things, like you might be neurodiverse if
Yeah.
dot dot dot, or so, like
Yeah.
just so that we can like start to, okay,
Yeah.
maybe there's something to look into here for me.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, internally, if your brain is always racing or you have lots of thoughts, then that's a big one. I also found like interrupting, women like to really interrupt in conversations. So if they're like, I find myself, I'm constantly interrupting because my brain is so quick to respond that I want to like respond and also not forget, because again, my brain is moving so fast that by the time I have a chance to respond, I've moved on and probably forgotten. So interrupting is a lot. Another one is for particularly women, they can get really hyper focused on either relationships or food. So if you find that you have like um, a best friend for like 6 months and you're just really intense, you see them all the time for 6 months, you talk to them all the time for 6 months, and then one day you just kind of are over it, which sounds really mean and harsh. And that's not how necessarily people feel, but it's just kind of all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm done now. Like, and you kind of move on and you find another really intense relationship and have that really intense. Um, and then as well as food, it can be like you love something for like a while. So for example, something that I noticed that I like loved beans on toast, which is a very British thing, very British. And I loved it for like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I'm like, ew, this is the worst. Like, how could I ever like this? So it's things like that as well. So, and it could be even like diets. So you could be really good at diet, doing a diet or food fast or whatever it is. I'm not saying you have to, but like that idea, like you could be really good at it for 6 weeks. And then after 6 weeks, you like totally blow it and you're done because your brain has gotten that dopamine that it was searching for. So things like that. Again, another one for women is addictions. So because your brain is seeking a dopamine, it's seeking something that's going to give you that. And so a lot of women struggle with some sort of addiction, which can be shopping, it can be alcohol or drugs, or even just I remember a friend, her sister, which I now look back and think, oh, I wonder if she has ADHD, but she would just do crazy things. Like she would, and all like good things, but so she'd like jump out of airplanes and raise money, to do that. And, she would like, she got really into doing just like extreme sports. But she would kind of do one sport and then move on to the next sport and then move on to the next sport and move on to the next sport. And so she never really stuck with one extreme sport, which that's a dopamine chasing adrenaline rush type of a thing. And so, yeah, that's a little extreme, but like that idea of like things that kind of give you that dopamine rush are things that women will kind of seek to do as well.
What about like stuff around the house? Like general like things you do during the day or like your patterns at work or forgetting to close cabinets. Like
Yeah.
is that a is that a
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, figuring closed cabinets. Laundry seems to be a big one. I found just kind of when I've posted some stuff on social media, so many people can relate to like having to put away laundry or even just the whole process of laundry. So getting dirty clothes into the washing machine to then get them in the dryer, or in the UK, if it's sunny, we put them outside to air dry, and then taking them back in and then putting them away. Like that's never done. Like I never do that. Like we have a tumble dryer for a reason and they're right next to the washing machine. Like literally the door's open. So I literally just can just shove them straight in. And then there are days where my kids, they attend a school where they have to wear a uniform, where they will get their uniform out of the dryer because that's where they've sat since Monday and it's now Thursday. But they're clean. That's at the end of the day. So yeah, laundry seems to be one
Yep.
that just all those little tasks kind of just add up and your brain forgets. So I know friends who I've not done this personally, but I know friends who have like started fires in their kitchen because they forgot that they started boiling water and they walked away to answer the door and then got distracted, and 3 hours later, there's like a small kitchen fire happening. So it's things like that. Um, I walked away from my shower once and walked around my house in a towel because I forgot that I was taking a shower and wanted to go do a quick task, which turned into another task, which turned into another task, to which I almost opened my front door in my towel to take out the rubbish and realized I was in my towel and that I was about to go take a shower. And that was like 45 minutes later. So it's things like that. Like you kind of just, I don't want to say you float from task to task, but also no task actually gets fully done. If so, yeah, another one's like emptying the dishwasher. The amount of times my husband has come in and seen the dishwasher half emptied because I realized when I was unloading the plates that I needed to do something else. And then that's where my brain went. So it's things like that. Like a lot of half undone tasks around the house is a very common thing.
I don't mean to put you on the spot in terms of like give me the statistics on this and so you can give me kind of a
Yeah.
general idea if you don't have that like just sitting on your shoulder ready for a moment like this. But I've heard, I think, that there's been kind of a surge of women being diagnosed specifically with ADHD lately because I think maybe there wasn't a ton of research on it for a long time, or I mean, you did say that it shows up in women differently, and I'm guessing shows up throughout our lifespans differently. Like, when you're a kid, it shows up differently than maybe post-menopause, or just that it kind of ebbs and flows throughout your life. But is that correct? Am I remembering something I randomly
Yeah.
heard somewhere correctly?
Yeah. So all of that is true. So research in women it's not just neurodiverse things, but actually in general, which is shocking, has only started doing since 2013, I think, is when research for women's needs in the body. So things like heart attacks in women, what does that look like in women? Strokes in women. So all kind of medical needs only started in 2013, which that then opened the door to the brain and realizing that the brain is different in women. And so, yeah, and then this kind of generation of women who are now premenopausal is often the time when women are diagnosed because they have masked it, they've held it together, and then all of a sudden their body's going through massive hormonal changes, which have to do with drop of dopamine and estrogen and kind of all of that. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm this completely different person. And so that's a lot of women are being diagnosed. And so the average age for a woman to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism is actually 30, which is crazy. When the average age for a boy or a male is 6. So massive gap. And part of that is just because, like I said, women don't display it the same. So when a 6-year-old girl is not fidgeting, and isn't experiencing the same things as a 6-year-old boy, they're like, oh no, it's not ADHD, it's anxiety. So the joke is, if you've been diagnosed with anxiety, you should probably go check that diagnosis. um, so that was my story. I was diagnosed with anxiety, and I always kind of thought that's true, but I felt like there was something more. And then kind of realizing actually anxiety is a very common symptom for, particularly for women, to have ADHD. And it doesn't go away just because I have ADHD. I still have anxiety, but it's just that was that kind of reality of there's something more to my anxiety, which a lot of women who are in their 30s and 40s also agree that they were diagnosed with anxiety, but they felt like it was something else, but didn't know. And then now being diagnosed with ADHD and or autism. So yeah, I don't know the exact statistics, how many women are being diagnosed now, but there's a lot. It is a big surge, which is amazing. Like, I just know how freeing it was for me to get that diagnosis, and to be honest, it was part of it was like just knowing I wasn't crazy, that my brain was just reacting differently to the world. But yeah, there's a massive surge, and it's kind of exciting. I'm excited to see more women being like, this is who I really am, and this feeling more comfortable in their skin.
2 questions. One, tell me about the process of being diagnosed. Like who does that? Cuz I don't like if someone's like I am curious as to whether this might be true for me. Like who do you talk to?
Yeah. So in the UK, the first person you go to is your GP or your family doctor, which I know is the same in the US as well. And then from there, so when I went to my GP, because I have kind of done this with my son, I just went in with a list and was like, this is why I believe I have ADHD. These are all the symptoms. This is kind of the facts to back that up. And then in the UK, we have something called the right to choose, where the doctor kind of signs you off to someone else to go through that process. And I was clear when I went through the process, I wasn't seeking the process for medication, because that's some doctors are hesitant to do that because it's kind of seen as a weird, like you can get medication quite easily. But I was like, I don't want it. I don't have it. I don't. It's not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just for myself. I knew I didn't need it or want it. So there was that kind of aspect as well. So then through the right to choose, they do interview their psychologists and doctors kind of involved. So there's someone who interviews you and goes through loads of questions and kind of asks about your family and your childhood as well as now, and kind of all these different things. And then someone else looks at that and they decide if you do or not. It's basically ticking enough boxes. And then from there, they kind of have a discussion with you about kind of next steps or how you can receive help and stuff like that. I know in the US, it is a similar process, but there's some insurance things involved that you have to check your insurance and stuff, but it's a similar process. They have, you kind of do an interview. So my interview was like 2 hours long, maybe 2.5 hours long. And then from there, they filled in all the forms and did it, which it took me from getting my GP to say, yes, I could do the right to choose, to actually setting up an interview was like 6 months, which right there is a sign of ADHD, because it took me ages to actually,
Oh, okay,
my
that was
executive function took me ages to actually do. So I felt like I said to the person doing my interview, I was like, yeah, I got my GP to write off 6 months ago, and it's taken me this long to set up the appointment. I was like, so that should be my first clue that I have ADHD. It's just taking me that long to do it. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
I thought you were saying that it took the whole process that long. And I'm like, oh, that is so frustrating. It's so frustrating when you want some answers and you have to wait in a big long line in order to get them.
Yeah.
Um, but also, yes, making appointments. I think I think so many of us are like, yep, I do that too. Um, do you find either for yourself or for the women that you talk to, what would you say to women who are sitting here going, I have a hunch that my brain works differently in some way. And I am scared to find out because of my own preconceived ideas of what that would mean about me, or because of others' ideas about what that would mean about me. Like, talk to anyone who's sitting here going, like, maybe I'd rather not know.
Yeah. I would first say you're not alone. Even if it feels like no one in your circle is wired, their brain is differently or thinks differently. But there are thousands of people around the world who are standing up and saying, we are different and it's okay. And so to know that you're not alone. The second thing is I found it. So my husband is autistic, but is I guess technically classed as self-identified autism. So he's not gotten a diagnosis, and for him, he never will because he's like, I don't need it. I am happy to know that I am autistic and I don't need a diagnosis. Whereas for me, I needed that piece of paper to say I had ADHD so that I knew I wasn't crazy because I felt crazy. And and so that's a decision that as well, maybe, maybe there's someone out there who's, you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, I'm happy to be self-identified as that. And that's totally okay. It's totally okay to be self-identified as that. Wherever you sit on the spectrum, it's okay to be self-identified. However, for some people like me, getting that diagnosis was freeing. It was literally when I got that piece of paper and heard them say, you have ADHD, it just felt like the world was lifted from my shoulders and I could breathe. It felt like I was holding my breath. And I even say I felt like I was holding my breath for my whole life, even though I don't have a bad life. I have a very happy life before diagnosis and now, and nothing. I never, wouldn't say it was a bad life, but it just felt like, okay, there's a reason for all of this. And so if you are thinking, maybe I fit into these boxes or feel misunderstood, that was something else I felt a lot was I was misunderstood because I wasn't fitting into the cookie shape or the cookie cutter shape that I was told I was supposed to fit in. And so
Mhm.
I was kind of just feeling really misunderstood. So to have that diagnosis again, I just felt like, okay, there's a reason for all of this. And there are resources out there that can help me and people I can talk to that I can feel free. So I was only diagnosed about just under a year ago. And in the
Mhm.
last year, it just has felt so much freedom and so much grace for myself because things that I would, again, thought every mom is doing the laundry, every mom is cooking these amazing meals. But there would be nights where I couldn't do that because I've spent my whole day doing other things. And I just having that grace for myself has just been so freeing to go, you know what? I managed to work and solve these 10 problems. Cooking is not one of them tonight. And so we're going to have a takeaway or we're going to have
Mhm.
leftovers or, I always have freezer food. That's one thing I would just a little shout out if your friend, particularly a mom who's neurodivergent, take over freezer food for them. So food in Tupperware that they can put in the freezer is the best thing. Like I've had friends who come over randomly. They'll just drop it off and not even tell me they dropped it off and just say, "Oh, there's food in your entryway." And knowing that like I just have a healthy meal that I can give my family is the best. Sorry, that's a full side note, but yeah, just a big show. But yeah, just overall, just the freedom I felt, and I would just encourage people to know that there's freedom in finding out. And if it is not a diagnosis, I have yet to speak to someone who goes, I was thinking about this and it not be a diagnosis of something. Because someone told me once, which I don't know how true this is. I have started asking people, so it'd be interesting. But neurodivergent people think about it and then will actually pursue a diagnosis. And non-neurodivergent people it doesn't even cross their mind that they might be neurodivergent, um,
Interesting.
which I think is really interesting. And again, I don't know how like factually based that is. That's just someone else has shared that. And I thought that's so true. Like just my own experience of I've talked to other moms or kind of other family members and just their experiences and was like, oh yeah, that's kind of become a true statement because of my own research, not because of any science.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. And I was diagnosed with anxiety a handful of years ago. And I'm so glad that I have that diagnosis, because there are times, like, the thing about having something happening inside your brain is that it's sort of like it's sort of like asking what you see, but there's something different about your eyes. And you're like, well, I'm telling you what I see, but what I see might not necessarily be there, if that makes sense. And so with
Yeah.
my anxiety, like I'll get, just this kick up of fear or worry about a certain thing. And I used to say, oh my gosh, like this is sort of, I wonder if this is, I should pay attention to this. Like this is sort of my intuition that something might be about to go wrong, or like I should, this is telling me something. And so in a lot of ways, I would live smaller than I needed to. What I've since learned is, and this is confusing because sometimes, yes, I do think we have sort of that kick up of fear of like, you need to get out of here, or like, you need to, that may not be a safe person for you, or, things like that. But a lot of the time, I'm feeling anxious not because this situation's telling me something, or not because something bad's about to happen, but because I have anxiety. And it just is like, at least it's something to check, to be like, it just, it's just another check along the way as you're trying to kind of figure out what's going on inside of yourself. But having words to wrap around your experience, I think, I mean, at least for me, has felt so freeing. That
Mhm.
why am I feeling this way? Well, because I have anxiety. That's why. It doesn't mean that the world's necessarily falling down right now,
Yeah.
around my head.
Yeah.
Um, can you, what are some things that you've changed in your life to help sort of cope, I guess? Like, this thing has been really hard for me for my whole life. I've now found out why. What are some things that you've been able to do to make some of those things easier?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is just having more grace for myself. So
Mm,
our house is not always clean. It's not always fill in the blank for any Instagram mom who has the perfect, quote unquote, perfect life. Like I have just given myself grace and been like, at the end of the day, as long as my kids know that they are loved and they are safe, I've done my job. That's kind of lower. And I don't like saying lowering the bar. I've just given myself grace for it because I don't think I don't like lowering the bar. That's just me personally. I like to keep a high standard, but just knowing I have grace that the bar is my kids know they are loved and that they are safe.
mhm.
That's the bar. Everything else is just kind of filler.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing. The second thing has been, it sounds kind of strange, but it's telling people that I have ADHD and trying to break some of that stigma because a really interesting conversation I had. So I have what I call my paying job and my free job. So my paying job, I went to our leadership and said, I have ADHD. These are some kind of accommodations that I would like to make, which the first response I got was, but you're a leader. You can't have ADHD. And I was like, no, yeah, you can. Like, it's still, look at Steve Jobs. I always say Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, like, they're massive leaders and they both are on the spectrum with multiple things, actually, not just one thing. And it just kind of, and I found from that conversation, a lot of people have stigmas about things. And so by me using my voice, I'm helping people see what it's like. And but then because I'm also upfront about it, I find other people respond more graciously to me and more lovingly to me, which you might say this. I've gone back and been like, oh, is this double standards or whatever? But it's like, no, actually, this is how my brain receives things. And so, I can say up front, like, hey, in this conversation, I need to know XYZ. Or, a lot of times I go into meetings and I'll start the meeting saying, is this a decision making meeting or is this a dreaming meeting? And before I would feel really like guilty by saying that. But now I'm like, well, no, they know I have ADHD and they know I need to be in the right mindset. And so like that helps them get the best of me is by knowing what kind of meeting or what kind of whatever I'm heading into. So just being
I
kind
feel
of
like
upfront
that
about
is
that.
like a great idea for absolutely everybody. Like
Yeah.
that's such a good idea. It's like, what is the purpose of this gathering? What are we trying to
Yeah.
accomplish here? That's like a hot tip for basically any conversation, I
Basically,
think.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, there's things that this is again total side note, but like we talk about accommodations for people who are on the spectrum. And a lot of time I get people, so some of what I do is helping people in the workplace to advocate for themselves because there's nothing in the workplace. Like there is no support in the workplace that you You just have to advocate for yourself. And so some of that is just helping and being a support system for that. And I always say, though, accommodations like are specific to a neurodivergent person, but they help everyone. And the example I always use, which isn't necessarily a neurodivergent one, but is um, I always say, like, I call them curb ramps. I don't know what they're actually called, but when you get to the corner and the curb like slants down so you can cross the road. And that was an accommodation made specifically for wheelchair users. But how in reality, how many people use them? Everyone, right? So parents who have strollers or buggies use them. People who have the grocery shopping cart things, bags. I don't know. Very common. And we call them granny bags in England. But
That's
they
really
use them. People who have luggage, they use them. Like that's something that everyone uses and is helpful for everyone, but how actually the accommodation was made specifically for wheelchair users. And so when we think about accommodations in the workplace for neurodivergent people, it's not a leg up for them. It's just a setting a standard for them that helps everyone. For
Mhm.
example, going into a meeting and saying, what type of meeting is this? That helps everyone in the room, not just the neurodivergent person. It's just the neurodivergent person is the one who asks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I'm really passionate about and starting to create I'm in the works of creating a kind of resource for workplaces that are things that it doesn't cost money to do. It's just might take a little extra time for something, but actually you can get more out of everyone in the workplace than that. So I've had lots of conversations with people in the workplace about it recently. So it's one of those like, this is amazing. But yeah, anyways. Um,
That's really awesome. That's really awesome. Is there anything around like at home that has made um I mean, I feel like this like grace makes sense with like your socks. Like why take things off your plate that don't need to be there? Like if something is not a big deal, don't make it a big deal. I really like that. Is there anything else that has just like helped you get through the day differently?
The other thing I try and go by, there's two rules that we've implemented in the last couple years. One is in my marriage specifically, and it's called the dream rule. So I love to dream and I love to plan holidays that I know I will probably never go on. The
Mm.
amount of holidays I've planned to Japan that are like £1,000,000, like the big, like one, not like in a sad way, just in a like, I just like, I'm like, let's look at my budget is £1,000,000. Let's see what I can get with that in Japan, things like that.
Awesome.
So I love to do that. And the dream rule is me sharing those dreams with my husband. So he's autistic, he's very realistic. And I say, right, I have 5 minutes to tell you my dream. And then I'll share all my plans. I'll be like, I have like websites. I'm like, this is the hotel we can stay at. This is the cruise we could do. This is all, like, and for 5 minutes, he can't say anything basically. Like, it's me just sharing. And after 5 minutes, he can then start to ask questions because we found that if he asked questions too soon, I didn't get to share my dream. And then I felt hurt that he wasn't listening because all I wanted was someone to listen and be like, oh, cool. Like, that sounds interesting. Whereas he's like, but Greer, that's going to cost this much. And if we do it this time of year, like, you can't do it this time of year. And, like all the, he gets very realistic. And so the first thing I would say is have a dream rule. It's amazing. It's changed our marriage. It's been great for doing that. So, and literally I set a 5-minute timer, share my dreams. And he has started to learn now. All he has to say is like, oh, that sounds fun. And then leave it. Like, he doesn't even have to like say, because then in a week's time, I'll be over it and I'll be on to the next holiday destination. So, no worrying. The second thing I try and do, which is more of our family, is what I call the triangle rule. And I won't lie, I took this from someone else, but just added my neurospicy brain to it. Is I kind of, for the day, I know there's 3 things I'm going to have to do. And you could even narrow it down to like the morning and afternoon, but for me, it's the day. And it can change every day. So it could be, I have work emails, I have work meetings, and I have to do dinner. And the triangle rule is I only have 2 hands, so I can only do 2 things. And so maybe I get through my work meetings and dinner but I didn't do my work emails. And that's totally okay because I did 2 of the 3 things. And that idea that, and it, again, like I said, it can change and it helps me to kind of prioritize a little bit more because, again, my neurodivergent brain doesn't always know what is the priority because I see everything the priority and I need to get everything done. And so having those 3 things is, if I get 2 of those done, it's been a great day. If I get 3 of those things done, then perfect. Like and if I don't, as long as I got 2 of those things done, I'm okay. Like I have done that. And it kind of helps me prioritize exactly what I do. And again, that can be days that I don't work. It could be, hey, I need to clean the toilets or the bathroom and laundry and go grocery shopping. And again, maybe I don't do the laundry. As you all know, I probably don't. So, I got 2 of those 3 things done. And so again, I don't feel like I failed because my to-do list will always be a million things long and I'll always be adding things to it. And so to know I have the triangle rule where I've done 2 of the 3 things, I'm okay. I've not failed the day. And I've actually been productive because that's something else that neurodivergent brains always can't hold on to is how productive they've actually been.
Just I'm spiraling right now. I'm like, oh gosh, I feel that so like viscerally. I have to know about the triangle. Do you like write that down? Like, do you make it a triangle and like the most important thing goes on top and then there's like 2 other things? Or like, are you the top of the triangle and your 2 hands are the bottom? Like, where does the triangle come from?
Yeah. So I do, I don't know the actual name of it, but like it's not a perfect triangle. So I write it down in my calendar. So I'm still visual. Again, if you have particularly ADHD and if you say you're a visual learner, let's just be honest, there's like a 60% chance you have ADHD. So, because visual learners, because ADHD brains, if it's in front of you, they can focus. Once it leaves their sight, it's gone. The example I always use is it's not a great one, but is I got married and 2 years later, well, I'd been apart from my husband before then, but 2 years later, I went on a week-long work trip and I didn't call him a single time. Like I knew I was married, but I totally kind of forgot he existed. And like was so invested in this conference that I was at and was like totally all in. And like, again, knew I was married. It wasn't like I forgot I was married. It was just he didn't exist that week. And then I got home and told him all about it and didn't understand why he was mad at me. And he's like, he didn't call me once and he never replied to my texts. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's like, and I look back now and I'm like, yes, that was a very ADHD thing to do. But yeah, so anyways, visual learners. So I write it in my calendar on the day. So I have a big calendar that has the days kind of broken up. And yeah, I write what the 3 things are. Like I said, my calendar also has my to-do list for the week or even all the things. And so I kind of sometimes will even look at that and see like, okay, what do I need to put on for today? Whatever else looks. But yeah, so it's not like a perfectly shaped one. It's like a oblong one. I don't know if that makes any sense. So it's like one side's longer than the other sides. And I do that unintentionally, but now that you've asked me about it, I think I do that because I don't see one greater than the others. I just see these are my options for the day. And so it's just kind of
So
whatever
these are your
happens,
3
happens.
options and if you pick 2, you
Yeah.
got to at least pick 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. There's this Mark Twain quote that I have always really loved. And this is not going to be word for word, but it's something to the effect of like, if your job is to eat a frog, it's best to eat it first thing in the morning. Like that's something nobody wants to do is to just like eat a frog. But if you have to do it, like knock it out first. And
Yeah.
then if your task is to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. And I've scheduled my days like that in different seasons of life where it's like, what's the biggest frog? And then what's the second biggest frog? And if I do those things, if I do nothing else today, and then knocking it out first instead of letting procrastination take over. And then it's like the afternoon and you've been dreading it all day. That
Yeah.
might just be me, but
Yeah. No,
I
that's a
really like that.
yeah. So something that ADHDers are really good at is waiting till the last minute. Like, so again, I look back at my life and think, how did I not know I had ADHD? So all of my papers I would write hours before they were due during college. And I got A's. Like it was, but I could just cram it all in. And I mean, the amount of people who say to me, oh, you can cram in a week's worth of work into one day. And I'm like, yeah, because all my deadlines were that day. And I again think back and I'm like, how did I not know that I had ADHD? Because procrastination is our number one gift that we have. So it's
um, tell me about when we're talking about neurodiversity. A lot of times we're not talking about ourselves, or we are talking about ourselves, but in addition, we're talking about someone that we love. And it could be a partner, it could be our kiddo, it could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker. I think specifically with people that you are like responsible to or responsible for, I guess. So like let's say like a partner or a kiddo. What happens then if you have a suspicion that someone really close to you might be neurodiverse or have a diagnosis of some kind? Like, where do we start?
so it's if they're a child, I think it's a little easier. So because you can go and get a little bit more, ask a little more questions. So I mean, I'll be honest, the first person that so we knew with our son around 2 that he was just responding to the world differently. And at first, a lot of people were like, oh, it's the pandemic. Because in the UK, we shut down. We did not leave our house pretty much for a whole year unless you went to the park. And even that, you did not talk to anyone. So he was a year old when the world shut down. And then kind of when we were coming out of it, he was 2 and a bit. And so some people were like, oh, it's the pandemic. But as a mom, I just knew something else was there. And I just was like, okay. And so we just started asking some questions. And thankfully, my mom did a whole study and has worked with preschool kids her whole career. And so I just asked her, I was like, how would a typical 2-year-old respond to this? Or how would this be? And it was great that she was my mom. I know not everyone has that, but I would say
Mhm.
go to your nursery or childcare because they're going to see your child and they're going to see a typical child and a neurotypical child. And they're going to be able to kind of say, oh, yeah, actually, they respond differently this way or they don't. Or, I know, again, my mom was very good at saying, yeah, that's a different response than I would have thought, but I'm not sure, it could be this or it could be that. And never once diagnosing because that's not her role, but kind of just being able to share. And so I would say if you're having kids and you are having those suspicions, wherever they are, if they're in school or you know, preschool, nursery, whatever, go ask them first and just say, hey, could you make some observations for me about this? Or could you see that? And it also helps when you, especially with schools, it helps start that dialogue of, hey, I'm noticing something different, which likely is going to mean my child needs support from you. So let's have that open dialogue now. And let's kind of have that open conversation. So I would definitely I'm also very proactive in that. I have a degree in education, and so I always want children to learn and love learning. And so that was something else when I went to our school and said, like, I want to set up my child to love learning because he's going to be learning the rest of his life. And so let's work together to do that. And there was some bumps along the road and things that, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect, and they will not instantly be like, oh, yay, we're so glad you're here. I have definitely become that parent where when when they see me come into the school office, they're like, oh, you again. But I'm okay with that because that means my child is getting the support he needs. And we have
Yeah.
seen, I have fought so hard for the support he needs, and we've seen that. And he has done a 180. And I had to drag him into school a year ago. And now they have finished school now, just now, but I had to drag him into school. Whereas this year he has ran into school and loved what he's been learning and doing because of the support he had. And so just to say, don't give up on support. It is worth it. There are parents who have fought much longer than I have. And every year is a battle. I don't want to say just because I've done it once, I don't have to do it again. I've had to go back in every year and say, okay, what does next year look like? How are we doing it for next year? And different things. But yeah, so for kids, I'd say it's a lot easier. For adults, it's harder because they will have lived their whole life, most likely not knowing. And unless they are open to that kind of conversation. So husband and wife, I think, is a bit easier because you can have probably a bit more honest and open conversations. With friends, I have had friends who I believe are on the spectrum, but I've never said that to them because it's not necessarily my place. Whereas I've had friends who come to me and say, "Hey, things that you've said or things you've shared make me think this. What is your observation?" And then that's when I can share and say, "Yeah, I've noticed that about you too, but that's okay. Let's, here's some resources that I found. Here's some links, or here's a book, or, whatever." Because it's their journey. And I find they need to come to the realization, because if you're not ready to hear it, it can be the worst. But if you are ready to hear it, it can be freeing. And so
Mm.
kind of wanting to guide that. So it's harder with adults, I'll definitely be honest. But if you're in a relationship where you just give space for people. I think that's the biggest thing, is I've tried to give space for people to ask questions about what it's like for me. And then in sharing that, they kind of sometimes connect the dots and sometimes they don't. And that's totally okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some things, if you do have someone in your life, let's go partner, because it really is such a partnership. And so the way that your partner's brain works really impacts your day-to-day life. Do you have any advice for someone navigating life with a partner whose brain works differently from theirs? So like basically all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, counseling, marriage counseling or couples counseling is the best. We got to a point where, so my husband's autistic. He's very realistic, to the point, factual, and I love that about him. But when I'm crying because something happened and he's just telling me, "You don't need to worry," not great. Like, let's just be honest. Like, you're like, cool, okay, and so yeah, it just got to a point where I was like, we need marriage counseling or couples counseling, and that's helped us to think about our communication and think about um, giving space for each other. So the idea of the dream rule kind of came out of that and things like that. And so the first thing I would just say is, it's okay to go to marriage counseling or couples counseling. And you don't have to be in crisis to go either. You can just say, "Hey, I want to work on this area. I feel like we're disconnecting." And it doesn't even have to be anyone who's neurodivergent. It's just, we found communication was the biggest thing that we just seem to disconnect on, because I'm needing emotions and my husband is a robot and does not do emotions, which is a very autistic thing as well. So very general. I don't want anyone to think all autistic people don't do emotions, because they do. They just do them differently. So I just want to, yeah, don't want all
Yeah.
the people come at you. But so that was the big thing. And also just recognizing, giving him space. So he loves to just dump information on me that I may not care about. I'll be honest. He loves movies. He loves movies. He loves researching everything about a movie before it comes out. And I don't care. Like, I am. And so, but giving him space. So again, we literally set timers. The amount of timers we set in our relationship, you might think we're crazy, but we set a timer and he has 5 minutes where he can just dump all the information. Usually I'm cooking dinner when he does that. So I can be like, interesting. Oh, wow. But not having to actually
Mhm.
fully engage, which he does know this. This is not a secret to him. But yeah, so I would just say, find what work for you and for them, and give it a go. Just try it. There's things that we were trying to work on that just didn't work, and so we stopped doing it because we're like, this isn't working for us, and we gave it, a few tries. It's not just one time and it's done. But I would just say, and yeah, be willing to try things and be willing to know that what works for you and might look odd for you. So, for example, I remember a friend saying, "You guys speak really harshly to each other." And I was like, "Oh, do we?" I was really shocked by that. And I reflected on it and I talked to my husband about it as well. And we both were like, well, actually, we don't agree to that. Like, we both think we speak fine to each other. We don't feel like you know, we don't see that. We don't feel that. Neither of us felt that way. So we're like, we're going to continue to speak the way we do. And I went to her and just said, well, thank you for that feedback, but that's actually not how we feel. And, kind of gave her a little bit more information, and that was okay. Like, I think that was something that was the first time I also realized that was about 5 or 6 years ago when that happened. It was the first time I realized again that our relationship is different than others, but that's okay because it's ours and it works for us. And again, not to say we're perfect, but it worked for us and it works for us to kind of work that way. So
Mhm.
find things that work for you, I think would be the biggest thing as well. And it's okay if they don't look like what the world thinks it should look like.
Mm. Greer, I love this. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for going first in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, obviously you're not the first, but I think that just anytime we go through something and then are honest and open about what we've been through, then we have the privilege of leading other people through it. And I already know, I'm like, that's exactly what you're doing for so many of us, where we're going, okay, you've started a journey for us. And so thank you so much for your bravery and your advocacy and for fighting so hard and for creating the sidewalk curb ramps that help all of us. You're just doing really important work.
Oh, thank you. It's, definitely a journey and something that I never thought I'd be doing, but equally know that, someone needs to talk about it. So why not me?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming to Girls Night. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.